want to welcome the Chief of Police to the Q&A Cafe as we begin our 14th season, which is a wonderful thing. Here now at the Georgetown Club, I want to thank the audience for being here and District Cable Network for continuing to air us. And we've got a good season coming up. We're starting with the Chief, but in a couple of weeks...
Am I the first one for the season?
You are the first one. Why do you
okay.
think I hounded you the way I did?
Right.
And in November, we have Dan Rather, and we're doing Stuart Kenworthy, who's leaving as the rector of Christ Church, which I always like to say he preaches to power because he has all the architects of the Iraq War in his parish. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to do Bruce Allen, the president of the Redskins, the name which we're not supposed to say, which I was thinking I would start by asking you. The position of the city is that they want the name changed, and they really don't want the team to move back into Washington unless they do. Do you share that position?
So, you know, I've been watching this whole thing unfold, and it's amazing. And the same thing happens in the police department a lot. People who are in charge of big things really don't like other people telling them what to do with their things.
Guess you know firsthand.
I do, but you know, sometimes, and you have to tell my people internally this all the time, sometimes if people outside say you should do something different, maybe it's okay to say, you know, that makes sense. You know, you know, there's such a heavy emotion behind this, and there's so many people that really want this to happen. So, you know, maybe this just makes sense
to do it.
Yeah.
And then,
and I know people in charge of big things don't like to be told what to do with their things, and
right.
believe me, I get that too. But
well,
yeah.
So that's your position,
yeah.
And you're going to stand by it. Well, thank you. I have a Google alert on your name, and you know, just as I'm tracking, you know, because you're going to be a guest on the show, and it was.
Oh, it's been jumping lately.
Well, let me just say, may I just say, in the last 12 hours, it was just shocked.
Chief Lanier is shocked over and over.
You are
again.
shocked. Now, I guess you're shocked from time to time, but everybody may not know what we're talking about. But do you want to tell us what you were shocked about?
And I don't use that word very often.
No, I know.
So there is a YouTube video of an officer on a public sidewalk in downtown Washington. There's a group of officers that are making an arrest. And a person on a bicycle, probably 20 feet away, takes his cell phone out and starts videotaping. I mean, this happens every single day. Hundreds of times a day, you know. We're getting ready to attach cameras to our own bodies, right?
So, yeah,
you know.
right.
And, you know, when you're watching, at least for me, when I'm watching the video and you see the two officers break from the arrest and start walking towards the person with the cell phone, you're going, oh, this is just not good. And so the officer's like, you know, you can't, you know, what are you doing? Are you a part of this? And, you know, basically trying to, you know, tell this person who's on public space, videotaping, you know, what the general public is seeing as they're walking by, that he's now part of a crime scene. He's, you know, his camera, his video footage could be evidence.
Right.
I mean, this is something that for decades, the First Amendment rights on public space, videotaping, this is not new to cell phones. It's not a new policy. It's not a new issue. We reissue and retrain and re-emphasize this policy. Every couple of years or so, there's an incident somewhere, and we have to go through this over and over and over again.
How did you find out about it?
Was it a Google alert? No, I don't think so. You know, I don't remember how I originally found out about it, but I can tell you people are really upset about it.
Did you call the officer as soon as you saw it?
Oh, no.
It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way. You know, because I mean, there's like I said, a very well-established policy. We just did retraining on it not that long ago. So, you know, I called the commander.
Well, I guess that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, I called the commander. It just seems to me, it's just, how could the officer not be aware?
Mm-hmm. How many years had he been on the force?
Not long.
No.
2 years, I think.
But it's still basic training.
Well, it's common sense. I mean, really, it's common sense. I think in the video, the officer says, this isn't public space.
Well, what's the next step with the officer?
Well, so, you know, we have policies, we have training, we do everything we can, all the checks and balances to try and make sure that people follow the policy, but from time to time, people violate the policy. And so we have to address that through the system that we have. So they'll, you know, his chain of command will bring him in. They'll, you know, he'll give us statement. With the video being involved, there's not a lot of investigation, really.
Right.
There's some, but not a lot
Yeah.
of investigation. And then they'll make recommendations for corrective action.
What is his
And
status?
I tell you, I'm a big believer in, although there are times when disciplinary action is the most appropriate and required, we can't overlook the fact that if an officer does something because they don't understand a policy or they don't, clearly he didn't understand, there's some training that has to go back into
Yeah.
some mandatory retraining. And so it's not just, kill the fly with a sledgehammer. It's let's make sure, because disciplining somebody's not going to make them understand a policy any better, is it? So
Right.
I make sure that there's some component of, retraining for an officer if they clearly don't understand something.
What's his status right now? Is he back out on the street?
He is.
And you'll just wait and have the hearing and then.
Yeah,
let him-
it'll take a little time to work through the system.
But, it comes to something, though, that I think for all citizens with the police, just how should we behave if we know we're right and the officer's wrong? How should we address that when we're in the street? I mean, in this case, this was a man who is a video editor for the Washington Post. He was not, at the time, identifying himself as working
Sure.
for the Post, I don't think. And he probably has some savvy about that kind of situation. But there are situations where the police confront citizens, tell them not to do something, and it may not be absolute policy. But I think we're intimidated, and we
Sure.
don't necessarily know how to address it because we don't want to get arrested. But how should citizens behave in that situation?
Sure, and this advice goes both sides. There's absolutely no value in a debate on the scene, at the
It
time.
only escalates.
Exactly. There's no value on either side for the debate. Ask for a supervisor. Okay, officer, I'd like to see a supervisor. And request a supervisor. If the officer doesn't request a supervisor, dial 911, tell them where you are, and say, I need a supervisor.
Maybe step back from the
I mean,
situation.
I just don't see the value in,
Yeah,
in a
in a
debate.
confrontation,
And that's
yeah.
just, and we try and instill that in officers. Most often those kinds of debates happen like during a traffic stop, where somebody will say, well, I didn't
Do
speed,
this,
or I
yeah.
didn't, there's a
Right.
process for adjudication on it. So there's no debate, out there while you're.
So that was your shock of yesterday. When was the last time you were shocked before that? You can just tell us about each of your episodes of being shocked in the last month, and we'll probably
There's
have
not a whole lot that
shocks you
shocking,
anymore. Yeah, because we were reminiscing about the first time you did the show was 6 or 7 years ago, and you called yourself a rookie.
Yes,
a
I
rookie
was,
police
rookie
chief,
chief,
and now,
that's right.
And now you're a seasoned. How many women police
Beat up, aging in dog years.
You're right. But how many female police chiefs are there? Do you know?
Well, there's 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the country. The major city chiefs, at any given time, 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
The average chief of police, the lifespan of a police chief is about 2 to 3 years,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah,
in
you've
big cities.
exceeded it, haven't
So
you?
they come and go, but about 3 right now.
And do you keep in touch with them? Do you have a?
I do.
network?
I don't do a lot of traveling, so I don't, go to a lot of the conferences unless they're here. But Major City Chiefs is one organization. I try and attend most of those gatherings, so that's when I normally will see them. But we do keep in touch via email and phone calls.
Get on Skype and say you won't believe the kind of day I had today.
We follow and encourage each other, put it that way.
Since we were on the subject of cameras, had me wondering yesterday with that episode, because you're planning to try out body cameras, and am I correct in assuming this is because of Ferguson, Missouri, or was this something you were planning to try?
Oh no,
anyway?
there's been a couple of years of work going into this. I mean, we're almost.
Was it escalated because of the events in
No,
Ferguson?
this is not something you can do overnight.
Right.
I mean, just the policy development, because it is relatively new, and implementing it in such a large police department will be the largest police department in the country with the body cameras
Right.
when we deploy.
How many
So-
will you have?
Well, we're going to outfit every officer.
Every
out in
officer.
Every officer in patrol, frontline positions, and probably some of the investigators as well. So it'll be a pretty large deployment. So the policy itself, we started drafting the policy, I want to say, probably a little over a year and a half ago. So we've been working on the policy while we were researching different types of cameras.
Right.
And we are piloting 6 different models. So we will be rolling out cameras in just about a week or so that will go out on officers, and they will test 6 different types of cameras. And there's a really lot that goes into
Are
this.
you going to wear one? No? Okay, well.
I've got one on me all the time.
I guess that's what, yeah, but it's not always your point of view.
This is true. It's never my point of view.
I mean, how long will the program last of testing it? Will it be a whole
So
year?
we want the same officers to test each camera. So we have, 15 to 20 officers in each patrol district and a few in different assignments that will test cameras for a period of 90 days and then, 30 days and then another 30 days. So it's going to take us about 5 months or so to test all of the cameras.
And everybody will stick with the same camera they're assigned during that
Yes.
time?
Yes.
And what are the protocols for when it's on or when it's off?
So right now, the way we've looked at a variety of different policy options, and one of them is what is the times they're on and off. And our policy will basically say as soon as an assignment is given to you or initiated by you, you have to activate that camera, and it remains on until you clear that assignment and have moved on. So if it's a traffic stop, you're backing somebody up on another call, the dispatcher assigns a call to you, so you just received the call, you have to activate the camera. And believe it or not, the officers are actually looking forward to using the cameras. I think just in general, everybody behaves a little better when there's a camera on.
Yeah, right.
And then there's really no dispute about points of view at the end of the day.
Will the person at the other end of the camera always know it's on? Or, I mean, is there a red light?
So the cameras are visible,
Yeah.
and so the officers will, acknowledge that they're wearing
Okay.
a camera
All right.
if feasible. Now, there's not always, if they jump out on an emergency, they may not have the
Yeah,
opportunity.
right.
But so video is not restricted in any way. If we're in a place where we're legally supposed to be,
Yeah.
and we've, sit down with the ACLU and others, there's no objection to the videotaping, but we're trying to make sure people are aware.
And how long will the videos go into a digital archive, a digital library?
Well, see,
How long
there's
will
where the
they be
big
there?
money comes in. So looking at the various options, storage of these videos, if you were, just imagine I have 450, 500 officers each shift working across the city just in the uniform patrol. And that 8-hour shift, each officer's going on 15 or so calls, initiating a couple of things. So that's thousands of hours of video that has to be stored. So the video will initially be stored for 90 days if there's no need for the video, so there's no crime that has to be, so if there's an arrest or a crime that's part of what's recorded, that'll immediately be downloaded and saved for the criminal investigation. But if it's just a routine day and there's no reason to save this video will be purged. So we're not going to maintain video, it will get purged on a regular cycle. So, but still a huge storage capacity.
Did you have to lay on more staff, like a staff to handle not just the training, but the actual body of videos?
Storage, but so FOIA. Now, if you think about it, we're the second highest
FOIA.
So Freedom of Information Act requests. So we get the second highest requests in all of the city, and we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And so there's got to be a way to redact video and provide video as well for FOIA. And while there is some software out there that does that, that's going to be a huge undertaking in terms of being able to get FOIA compliance, because the turnaround time is so short in Washington, D.C. Sometimes we'll get FOIA requests with 70,000 pages of documents, and we have 10 days or so to review them, to redact them, and turn them around. Yes, crazy. But it's going to be even worse now with the video. So we are looking at what our options are. Additional staffing that will have to, review that FOIA, and the legislation may have to change a little bit to accommodate how video is redacted versus, how paper documents are redacted.
Is FOIA going to be the only way the public would have access to these videos? I mean, could just John Q. Citizen, if they knew they were in a situation where they had been recorded by an officer, say, I want to see that, and they'll have access to it?
There's a 1,000 different scenarios. In general, these are all, just like a police document. So anything that is available publicly or public information can be requested and shared. Anything that is not open to the public or part of an ongoing criminal investigation will not be shared in general. However, it can be shared with complainants and attorneys.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated.
But you're excited about it.
I am.
Was there any internal self-checking within the department after what happened with Ferguson, where you talked, if not with, if not with the whole force, at least your immediate upper staff, about could this happen here? Are we sure we've got everything figured out so that it couldn't happen here?
Well, you watch every incident involving the police around the country, and you always are reviewing that with your own agency in mind. But I think what happened in Ferguson is because of just the different in the type of jurisdiction and the type of police department, the size of the police department, and their experience with, and the big thing that really has been the most damaging, I think, in terms of after the initial police shooting, was response from the police department.
Was it lack of training?
So I think it's lack of exposure. I mean, we deal with large gatherings here, protests, sometimes not just hundreds of thousands of people in a protest, but sometimes a lot of animosity and hostile folks in those protests. And even just a peaceful crowd, if you've never stood as a police officer in front of a crowd of 600,000 people or 100,000 people, that's an intimidating thing to try and manage large crowds like that. Yeah. But to try and manage large crowds like that when there's some frustration and anger and hostility, that takes years and years and years of training and understanding to have a police force that deals well with that. We've done it always here in Washington because it is Washington. So that is part of the ongoing training we do every day. It is part of the training in the academy. So the experience here is a little different. I think they were at an extreme disadvantage because they didn't have any of that experience and reacted with what they thought was the right thing. And then, police officers from large jurisdictions that deal with this stuff all the time, we're watching and going, we learned, a long time ago.
But now there's a movement now and a push to militarize police forces a little bit more. Do you think it's a good idea?
But please don't say that, because that's so not right.
I'm going to let you talk it through. But
it is a way. I mean, it is the catchphrase now because of the images that are coming out of Ferguson, and there is no military. There's a push to go the opposite way of police departments. I mean, we've tried to for 20 years, there's been a move through community policing to remove any images of the military, paramilitary image of a police department. That we've been pushing away from that image for 20 years across the country.
I know, but do police forces need tanks?
Well,
or anything like that?
Well, the armored personnel carriers that you're referring to,
right.
Yes, we save lives with them here all the time. When we have barricades, we evacuate people that are in the line of gunfire using an armored personnel carrier for protective cover.
Right, but you're DC. Does Ferguson need them?
Well, in a barricade, if you've got a sniper that's shooting and you're trying to evacuate people from an open area without a large protective ballistic barrier, how are you going to do that? So even small police departments deal with barricades all the time. And the small armored personnel carriers have been a staple of SWAT teams since the 70s. These aren't military equipment to us, they're SWAT team stuff. And no, you don't bring them out for the everyday police work. They're reserved for the SWAT team, for the highest risk, most deadly events, the very rare event, but the highest risk event. And so it's not military equipment. This is SWAT equipment that we've been using since the early 70s, and it's used, in fact, the day after that image in Ferguson, there was an article in the LA Times about how gunmen with AK-47s were opening fire in an open area, and the image on the front of the paper was an APC, a small armored personnel carrier with the LAPD guys, 10 civilians standing behind it, and they're escorting them out of the area where the gunman is shooting. It saved 10 people's lives right there the next day, and nobody caught it.
Do you have all the equipment you want and that you need for these kinds of situations? I mean,
yes.
You don't need more, there's not...
We didn't even really use that program. I mean, the 1033 program that a lot of this equipment came from, that typically is the smaller departments that don't have a lot of the equipment that they need. And while we have used it, we used it in 2005 for our patrol rifles. And if you think about it, in 2005, we really were trying to keep up with the wave of active shooters, school shootings, and things like that. We needed that large purchase of long guns for our officers to at least be equipped if we needed them to. These were brand new weapons that had never been fired, that were surplus from the military, that we couldn't afford to buy at the time. And we were able to take that surplus equipment and then use it for a valid, legitimate law enforcement purpose. We didn't deploy them on the streets. They're not general equipment that goes out there. They are reserved for only a small group of highly trained officers, and some of the first officers that showed up at the Navy Yard were carrying those guns.
Which is, we're at the anniversary of that. We're also, the day we're recording this, the day after the 9/11 anniversary. Do you feel we're ready for anything? Do you feel you're ready for anything that might happen?
Well, I think we're as ready for anything as any police department can be. We try and stretch our imagination every day. What is it that we haven't thought about? What is it we haven't trained for? What is it that we haven't imagined in all of our preparation? And so that's, when people say, what is the thing that scares you the most? Is it, radiological, biological, chemical? The thing that scares me the most is what haven't we thought about?
Right.
What is the one thing that we haven't thought about? And, so we try and push ourselves every day to continue to think, what is it we're missing? And that's why it's so important to watch everything that goes on around the world.
Well, an episode like yesterday where you say that, it's a relatively new officer, doesn't have enough training. Do you have?
Or you could say a relatively new officer who just got out of training.
Well, but
Another
still,
way to look at it.
it's a weak link. It's a weak link, right?
Right.
It's a weak link.
Right.
Do you ever drive around in a car that's not a DC police car? I mean, do you have your own car?
I do.
And have you ever
It's an old SUV, 2000, and I drive it around every time I'm not at work.
And have you ever gotten a photo enforcement ticket?
I have in my police car, my unmarked car.
In your police car?
In my unmarked car, yes.
Was it really your police car, or was it somebody else's police car?
No, it was me.
Okay.
It was, in fact, when the first round of, and I know where all the cameras are.
Well, that's not fair.
Everybody does. It's on the website.
Yeah, but you've got it.
I don't look at the website.
Okay, you
I
get
probably
told-
know least where they are.
You know when the new ones are being installed.
But and I was doing 36 miles an hour in a
Hello.
25
Yeah.
mile zone at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And of course, as soon as I saw it, I
Can
paid
we
it.
ask you what you
I
were
paid
doing?
it immediately. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But
But it's
I mean, we're not perfect.
No.
We're not
But
perfect.
it almost veers way
But
to the other
I
side
will
of
tell you
perfect.
though, I haven't been pulled over and issued a traffic ticket, in my personal car since I think the last time I got a ticket I was 19, and it scared me so bad. It scared me so bad. I was like, I'm not
I
gonna
wonder
get
how
pulled
the
over again.
conversation would go down if you were in your private vehicle in DC and you got pulled over.
I don't know.
You'd just acquiesce, yes, officer, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to do that.
Well, I
Please
try not to
forgive
be
me.
a rule breaker to start with, but I certainly would. I'm under more scrutiny than the average person, so believe me, I would do everything the way I'm supposed to.
There was a Washington Post story that called our compared our photo enforcement system to the Wild West. And in it, there was an anonymous senior district official who compared the system to the IRS, saying that with this system, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, and quote, that's worked well for us. Were you that senior
Well, first of all, that was referring to parking.
Okay.
So that wasn't referring
That
to my
wasn't-
traffic
okay, that
enforcement.
wasn't-
That's referring to the parking system that is administered by another agency. So that was not pertaining to the automated speed enforcement. And in fact,
Well, can
no.
I compare the automated speed enforcement to the Wild West?
So actually, here's the thing that the average person doesn't think about. So before we had automated speed enforcement, we used to have these radar guns that look like hair dryers.
I remember them.
And we'd sit on the side of the road and we'd go like this, right? Beep, 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 and that's you. You're speeding. Now there's 5 cars in 4 lanes of traffic going by. I got that split second to say that's you. Now with automated enforcement, the computer, if there's 3 lanes of traffic, when it hits the car that's speeding, it puts a red blot, or a green bar on that car and singles out the car that it's hitting with the radar beams. And then it's reviewed by 3 different people. The video is then
Right,
re-reviewed.
right.
So you are much less likely, much less likely to get a ticket
Then
that
why
is
doesn't
not
it always?
you.
But then why doesn't it always work?
Well, it does work. The problems with the photo enforcement, and they're very, very, very few and far between, given the number of actual citations that are issued. There may be an issue with, say, a tag. We've occasionally had the state of the tag misread.
Yeah.
And so when it gets to the reviewer, almost always that's picked up. because the reviewer has to be able to see what the state is and that the numbers are clear or visible. If they're not, it's discarded and no ticket is issued. So there are occasional times when something will get through, but given the number of citations, it's very, very rare there's a mistake.
Do you think this is a program that can ever exist in a way that it doesn't get ill will from the public?
Well, honestly, the DC residents like it. They support it. I've had, in fact, I will be completely honest with you, I get a lot of emails, and since that story ran, the only emails I'm getting is, hey, I saw that story, where's my camera? You promised me one 6 months ago.
Well, I think people obviously people like traffic safety, but I think that the process it is true, even though that may have been parking tickets, there is, when you are trying to dispute a photo enforcement ticket, it is difficult. There is a presumption that you were guilty, and that does create ill will.
A presumption they were guilty.
Well, that if you say, well, this isn't me, this wasn't my car, if it was a mistake, it's just hard work to get it straightened out. I had one that wasn't my car, and it was just difficult, but it got done, and I was absolved of any responsibility for it. But it's just aggravating when you.
Well, I mean, so again, it can happen with an officer. Mm-hmm. Writing tickets, right? Because there are a lot of people that are issued tickets by police officers that go and get them adjudicated, and they're overturned in favor of the motorist. Mm-hmm. What you have in your favor with automated enforcement is you've got video that proves, without a reasonable doubt, what the fact is. And so the video actually works in your favor as much as it works in the city's favor. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to dispute whether I wrote you a ticket that was valid or not, it's my word against yours. If you dispute a photo enforcement ticket, we're going to look at the video, right, and make a decision from there.
Well, okay.
Just saying.
You've got it down good, but I don't know that that's good. I hear you, but
it's not going to make people like it anymore.
They're not going to like it.
It's
and
not,
then especially when they see the enormous amounts of money you're making off of it, it just kind of like.
Well, we don't actually make the money.
Well, someone's making the money. Do you, is it as you put in all these cameras though, is it a system that is going to get more sophisticated and better? I mean, are you constantly changing it up? Are you constantly?
Oh, sure. I mean, we went from the last technology we had to this technology so that there is no discrepancy between multiple cars. I mean, the new technology now actually will cast that image and show you exactly which vehicle is being hit on that. So there's no guesswork at all anymore. So, I mean, technology is improved year after year. We want it to be accurate. So if there's new technologies coming out that is more accurate, of course we would invest in it.
Well, that's all the easy stuff. Let's get to the tough stuff. Let's get to crime.
All right.
Homicides are up. You were actually down. You were at remarkable levels,
right.
and now they're back up. And what is that about? What do you attribute that to?
Well, what I attribute it to is, well, two things. And people, when they say homicides are up, they're looking at a snapshot today. I'm
looking at this year
compared to this year, compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in 2 weeks, we could be down. So in the month of September last year, we had 23 homicides. Right now, we're at September, we're say 12th. We have 2. So each month, we had last year in the beginning of the year, last year from January to June, we had very, very, very low numbers. I mean, very low numbers. It was one of the lowest first 6 months of a year we'd ever seen. And then the second half of the year, we had a pretty good increase in homicides.
Yeah.
And so this year, we had a really busy January, a high number in January and February. So the year started out compared to a year that was record low, now with an increase. And now the second half of the year, we had 2 homicides in the whole month of August this year, last month. I've never seen that in 24 years in this city.
But you're still assessed by the total numbers.
So by the end of this month, our homicides will probably be down for the year compared to last year. I'm confident we're going to come in under 100 homicides again this year.
But does this concern you? I mean,
it doesn't concern me because, I mean, surely I want homicides to keep going down. There's no question. But to say that we're up right now today and knowing that most likely by the end of this month, we're going to have decreases, probably 10 to 15%, and then going into the remainder of the year, remember the Navy Yard was 12 homicides in one day.
That did make a difference, I know.
12
Yeah.
homicides
Yeah.
in one day. So, you know, I see our trend, if you compare on average just the last 3 years, our homicide trend is exactly where it's been for the past 3 years. It is not up. So you can't compare, you know, day by day. You have to look at the annual total and then look at that total annually and see the only reason our homicides were up last year is because of the Navy Yard.
But
And I think we'll come in well below that this year.
are you seeing any trends within the homicides that have happened this year?
Domestic violence, yes.
And what are you seeing there? What are you attributing
So
it
here's
to?
what I-
Why is it?
Here's what I look at, and I think this is important for people to know, because it's not stuff that's going to get written in papers, and it's not stuff that's going to get covered. You know, our non-fatal shootings are down dramatically, and have been down dramatically year after year after year after year. So much less shootings going on. Shootings are the thing that are the most deadly. That's you know, gunfire can take a lot of lives very quickly. So non-fatal shootings are down. Armed robberies with guns are down. The use of firearms, even in homicides, is down. A large number of our homicides this year were a single punch. You know, one person punches another person, they fall and strike their head and die from the head injury. That's a homicide. We have cases like that. The domestic violence cases, you know, it's hard to say what contributes to a rise and fall in domestic violence, but everywhere around the region, domestic violence is up.
How many domestic violence calls do you get? And
it is the #1 repeat call for service.
but do you have a figure?
Thousands a day. I mean, thousands across the city. I mean, it is the #1 repeat call to the police.
Does a story in the news like Rice, the Ravens, an episode like that video being played on TV, do you notice that it affects the numbers in any way? Does it have a cause and effect? Do they go down? Do they go up? Do you see any relation between when domestic violence does become the headline and people are talking about it? Does it help or hurt?
No, I mean, I think it helps a little bit in terms of awareness for people who are in abusive relationships. And one of the things we try and do to reduce domestic violence, which for 3 or 4 years was helping us, we dropped domestic violence dramatically, was actually having advocates go with us to addresses where we go repeatedly for calls for service and do a very quick lethality assessment. It's a 10-question survey. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that survey, if your answers as the victim of this assault or this domestic violence are yes to 5 of the questions, your chances of becoming a murder victim are about 80%. And so when you sit with a person who's in an abusive relationship, who never thinks this is going to rise to a level of them losing their life, and you say, you're 80%, you got an 80% chance of being murdered if you don't get out of this relationship, that changes the perspective of the average victim. And so that has been very helpful for us to get people out of those abusive relationships.
Do you have the numbers of officers you need right now to deal with whatever trends you're seeing in crime, whether there is a spike in homicides, whether there is more domestic violence? Do you have enough police right now?
Well, I think the force has to continue to grow some. Our population is growing so rapidly. So over, I think it's like 6 years, the population has grown 13%. The police department has grown 6% at the same time. Mm-hmm. We're keeping up because technology has helped us to keep up, but we're not going to continue to keep up. We're going to have just the sheer volume of population in the city requires more police, more traffic control, more, you know,
Have you asked for more police?
Well, we just got an extra 100 last fiscal year.
Okay.
So the first thing what I asked for this past year, the year we're coming to, was to restore my civilian positions. Mm-hmm. Because if I get the civilian positions that were cut back, I can put cops on the street tomorrow. Hiring new cops takes about 18 months.
Right.
Replacing civilian jobs that cops are in with civilians, I can do in 3 months, and put cops back on the street that have experience almost immediately. So that's what I'm pushing for now, is to get those civilian positions back. When I took over as chief, I had 700 civilian employees. I'm a little over 400 now. So that's a big cut. Somebody has to do those jobs.
But that's the same funding from the city council either way, whether you put it towards civilian employees or the force, right?
Sure, it's all personnel.
And have you asked for this?
Yes.
And you've gotten it?
Well, no, I haven't
Have you
gotten it yet.
Yeah, but I mean, but you're talking to the city
I have
council,
submitted
you're
proposals
testifying.
for civilianization in rounds, starting off with about 110.
And how many positions do you want?
The first round, 110.
110
positions.
If you feel like you're in a good place right now with the force, why do you need to take the detectives and have them work a beat or work the street every 6 weeks?
So it's not detectives, first of all. It's anybody who's not assigned to patrol.
Okay, but it includes detectives.
It includes detectives. So the program was started in 2000, so it's 13 years old. It's been going for 13 years. And the only thing that happens is every year, now I exempt based on what the priorities are annually. So everybody goes into the pool at the beginning of the year, and then there are requests for exemptions. Homicide's been exempt since I've been the chief. They were not before. They used to go. I've exempted them since I've been the chief. Sex offense branch has been exempted for the past 4 years. District detectives I've been exempting for at least 4 years because of just the volume of cases they deal with. So when I reissued the schedule for the redeploy this year, there was at least one detective who didn't think he might not get his exemption, so he went to the press and said, "Oh, I can't do my job if I get redeployed." And it's so I exempt those whose workload justifies, and I will exempt if they're not exempt on a regular basis, but there's a request for exemption that makes sense. I'll give them an exemption. But this is part of what makes them better detectives to begin with. How about going out there and policing the streets for a little while and remember what it's like to deal with those victims up front?
Do you think they agree with you?
No. Some of them do. Some of them do. I mean,
Do you think it's going to lead to an increase in retirements because they may not like this policy?
Well, if they don't like doing the job, it's probably time for them to retire.
But do, popularity. You have an enormous amount of popularity with the public. You seem to be popular with the current mayor. You were popular with the mayor who hired you. One of the mayoral candidates has already said she'll keep you. The other mayoral candidate, I don't think it's exactly clear, but he hasn't said he wouldn't keep you. But you're probably the most popular person in the city hierarchy.
Depending on who you ask.
Well, no, I was just going to say, it may not be with the force. And is that perhaps who you'd like most to be popular with? Do you need to be popular with your...
I don't think I can... So you can't effectively run any organization if you're making decisions based on popularity. I mean, I've been here 24 years. The vast majority of my friends and my lifelong friends are police officers and detectives and people on the department. So, the core group of the really hardworking cops, they get up and they come to work and they charge hard every single day. And I try and make sure every decision I make looks out for those guys because they're the ones that make this organization tick. They're the ones that people write nice letters about every single day. They're the ones that are closing and preventing crime. And then there's another, group of people that no matter what I do, so I'll give you an example. The people who complained about redeploy, I said, let me give them a little bit of a break. I'm going to let them work 4 10s, so they'll get an extra day off because that's something that the officers really like. So I let them go to a 4-10 schedule, and there was a small group that didn't want that, so they filed grievances, and then they started going sick. You get a 3-day sick before you can go to get a doctor's note. So then they would go sick 3 of the 4 days and only show up 1 day. So no good deed goes unpunished is the point. You can't run an agency based on popularity. I am concerned about what my hardworking cops think, and I listen to them and I get input from them all the time. And believe me, if they say to me, hey, wait a minute, this isn't going to work real well, I have to really take pause on what I'm doing.
Does it ever bring you down? I mean, do you...
Well, I caught myself in this last go-around with the teletype. It just strikes me as frustrating that anytime one of my employees doesn't like an assignment I give him for the day, it is run on the evening news for a week. Really? Really? Is that news? A detective doesn't want to go on redeploy for 5 days every 6 weeks, and that's news? I mean, yes, it's frustrating. I mean, and then the rest of the employees, are calling me and saying, "Don't worry about it, Chief."
We talked when you were a rookie, and these issues weren't on the table for you then. You were loved by everybody. So now, all these years later, you're facing another change in leadership in the mayor's office. Do you see burnout? Are you as vital as you ever were? I mean, do you feel ready for a new mayor and a new go-round, or are you thinking of what you might do after this?
You know, I will never be thinking of what I'm going to do after this until I'm ready to be out of this. You know, that's just there's no room for distraction, obviously.
But it'd be human to think that way.
Not really. I mean, it's distraction.
Okay.
So, you know, the way I think, and most police officers will tell you this, in this line of work, if you're becoming burned out, we all know when it's time to go. If I'm feeling burned out, or if I'm feeling like this is not something I can give 200% to, I'm not going to wait for somebody to ask me to leave. I'm going to leave. I mean, this is not one of those jobs that you continue pushing through when you're burned out. You've got to be committed to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know?
So how do you avoid burnout? How do you de-stress? How do you get...
Well, I still love what I do. And there's things every day, despite all the frustrations, and I tell people this, I'm like, sure. But every single day, there's something in my day that, you know, I go home and I think, that one call, that one email, that one comment from an officer made all the crap I went through today worth it. You know? Mm-hmm. Every single day I feel that way. There's always something. And so as long as you have that feeling, you know, and you're motivated to do what you do, I love what I do. To keep the stress down, I work out every day. Mm-hmm. You know, if I miss a couple workouts, yeah, I get, you know, the stress level starts to creep up. You know, I just work out, and then I make sure if I get a day off, I go and do something I enjoy doing. Spend time with my mom, you know, take my dog to the park, go kayaking, you know, something that I enjoy just one day a week. That's all I want, just one day.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought of running for mayor?
No,
Not
never.
One? Were you approached?
Yes.
And did you even take a meeting on it?
No.
No?
It's just not, it's not my...
Well, so, I mean, you will do something after this. What do you think it would be? Do you think you'd remain in law enforcement? Do you think you'd go off and run a kennel? I don't know. Everybody fantasizes at some point about what they would do if they weren't doing what they do.
You know, I've been approached about going to other large police departments. I don't know if I'll do that or not. I have a hard time imagining myself just, you know, kind of, you know, relocating and you know,
You'd like
running
to stay
another
in
police
Washington?
department. So I don't really know yet. I've gotten lots of job offers, government, federal government, local policing. None of which has lured me out of where I am right now.
If a new mayor came in and said, Cathy, I'm replacing you, how would you feel about it?
Well, I wouldn't want to work for somebody who wouldn't want me.
So you would you'd be prepared
it's
for that.
part of the job. You know that when you sign up.
We've been talking about the shocks and challenges you've dealt with coming up, but you've got another one potentially coming up after the election, and that's going to be the legalization of marijuana. What kind of training is that going to? Don't worry, we've only got like a minute, so you don't have. Yeah. But is this? I mean, how prepared are you for this, and is this going to be a big stress or evolutionary change for the force? What's it going to be like?
It's not a big stress, and I mean, we know and have known it's coming for a long, long time across the nation. It's been obvious that this movement has been picking up, and the decriminalization was really not that big a deal for us as well. You know, once the laws are on the books, we're going to enforce those laws. It's not a big deal. Sometimes we get caught in the middle because sometimes the public that didn't want the decriminalization will be angry at us.
Right.
You know, sometimes people, you know, get frustrated with the police when the laws they wanted enforced are no longer enforced. So that's our hardest challenge.
But do you think it will manifest itself as a good thing, a bad thing? You won't notice the difference?
I don't think it's going to be a big crime thing. You know, I'm not in public health.
Teenage kids, right?
I'm not in public health, and I'm
Right.
not raising a teenager. But a police thing, I don't think it's going to be a big criminal thing, no.
And how is the training being done? I mean, is it something you've been doing and you're doing now on a regular basis?
Well, sure. We train people for the decriminalization, and we've had no issues with that. Decriminalization to legalization is such a big difference.
Yeah.
So.
Since I'd mentioned 9/11, one thing I wanted to ask you as we closed, and it's probably a question that's going to be relevant forever, is, or at least in our lifetimes, where were you when 9/11 happened, and how did you find out? What were you doing?
I was actually on a project team. Chief Ransby had put me on to develop the new records management system, or select a records management system for the police department. So we were in a hotel downtown, and we were sequestered in a room reviewing proposals, and someone burst into the room and said, "Oh my God, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." So we all went into the lobby, and we were all in uniform, and kind of watched the horror unfold. And I remember I was the commander of the 4th District at the time, jumping in my cruiser and trying to get back to the 4th District from downtown Washington. And by that time, I was just a few blocks from the hotel. The Pentagon was struck, and just the sheer gridlock and listening to the police radio. And when I got to my station, I had officers on the roof of the police station with shotguns, because they really didn't know what was going on, and the only thing they could think of was to defend the police station, and they took shotguns to the roof. So pretty dramatic.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation with the chief. I thank all of you for being here. I thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And feeding me lunch too, apparently.
Yeah, well, you are going, yes, absolutely. Bring that lunch out here right now. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Good to
Carol.
see you. Thank you.